Chairman of Sri Lanka Tea Board, Mr. Niraj Dimel, past President of the Association, Mr. Chandima Wickramasinghe, members of the Association, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me thank you for inviting me to address you, and I'm extremely honored to be here at the 33rd annual general meeting of the Tea Factory Owners Association. So thanks again for inviting me. I'm not a tea expert, neither an expert on the industry, but however, I may share some thoughts with you on the economy. Certain decisions what we have taken. Of course, the chairman was bringing out few points. I may not be in a position to answer right now. Maybe we can engage in the future. The Honorable Minister can take the lead in that. But however, the tea industry is of paramount importance to Sri Lanka, both historically and economically. It plays a significant role in the country's economy and culture. The Tea Factory Owners Association too plays an important role in the overall value chain of the tea industry and provides invaluable services to the tea smallholders sector, which is a major contributor to national tea production. By supporting key processes such as processing of green leaf, supply of agriculture inputs, provisions of finance, and extension services, the members of this association are a vital component of the tea industry in Sri Lanka. By extension, this sector and members of the association become key players in Sri Lanka's economic recovery efforts. For Sri Lanka to emerge from this crisis on a sustainable basis, non-debt creating foreign exchange inflows such as tea exports as well as other exports are very crucial. Thus far, the government has made significant progress in stabilization of the economy, but I must also say we have a long way to go. We can't take it easy right now. The economy is stabilizing. A positive message has been passed on. We are very confident by the end of the year there will be a greater stabilization of the economy. But however, we have a long way to go. Inflation has been brought down to 4% from 70% in September 2022. And we expect during this month it will further drop down to approximately around 2.5% to 3%. Foreign exchange liquidity in the banking system has been normalized, and imports such as fertilizer and crop protection are now readily available. The supply of essential imports such as fuel and cooking gas have been restored, along with uninterrupted power supply, enabling a return to normal economic activities. Interest rates have declined sharply. I know still you have complaints. With the 1-year treasury bill yield dropping to 13% from over 30% in 2022. From the Ministry of Finance or the Treasury had to locally borrow, since we did not have access to the international capital market, at the rate of 30% for many of the months during the last year. But it is now dropping and we are happy about it. The Sri Lanka's recovery focuses on deep economic reforms, addressing the core structural vulnerabilities in the economy. Fiscal weaknesses has been the primary driver of macroeconomic volatility in Sri Lanka, and weak government revenue generation contributed to public debt reaching unsustainable levels. To address this, the government implemented a major tax reforms that enhanced tax rates in a progressive manner. But we do understand we need to strengthen our tax administration system. I think there were concerns raised by the chairman also. We can have a discussion on that and see how best we could assist you in a better way. But however, we have to stabilize and strengthen the economy first. Along with stringent management of expenditure, the revenue enhancement has enabled a primary surplus in the first quarter of 2023. Sri Lanka intends to continue its fiscal consolidation program until a primary surplus of 2.3% of the GDP is achieved from 2025 onwards. The government intends to lock these fiscal gains by bringing in legislation in the form of a Public Finance Management Act by the end of 2023. It's with the legal draftment. It's been discussed. Basically, we have finalized, so we are waiting for the legal draftments department to come back to us on that, which will introduce robust fiscal rules and disciplines on fiscal transparency and public finance governance. Another key source of past macroeconomic instability has been monetary accommodation of fiscal largesse. I don't want to explain more about that. You have experienced, the country has experienced the negative impacts on that. The central bank has consistently provided direct funding to the government, allowing fiscal authorities the space to overextend the budget. A new Central Bank Act that establishes a greater monetary authority and independence was passed in Parliament this July and will be effective from today onwards. It will be implemented from today onwards. This act prohibits monetary financing of the budget except under very exceptional circumstances. A key reform to establish microeconomic discipline and provide the legislative framework for inflation targeting. So if we want central bank financing in the future, the Parliament together will have to decide and agree upon to which extent the government can get the support of the central bank for financing. Going forward, the Parliament recently approved a couple of more new legislations introduced by the government, such as the anti-corruption law and the Parliamentary Budget Office to enhance transparency and accountability. Sri Lanka is addressing long neglected vulnerabilities in state-owned enterprises. Cost-reflective pricing was introduced in fuel and in electricity. With competition being introduced in petroleum retail and unbundling of the electricity monopoly, the gains are expected to be locked in over long term. The government is also in the process of restructuring state-owned enterprises. Basically, in the future, the policy of the government would be our economy will be driven by the private sector like you. So the government will only act as a regulatory authority. While such reforms have faced public opposition initially, in a post-crisis environment, there has been greater public understanding of the necessity of these reforms and the need to break from bad practices of the past. The next important step in our journey to sustainable recovery is for Sri Lanka to finalize the restructuring of its debt. This is crucial for the country to restore its external credit ratings and regain access to global capital markets, providing greater stability to external balances. A steady progress has been made with continued engagement with Sri Lanka's official creditor committee, co-chaired by India, Japan, and France, which was launched this April at the IMF spring meetings in Washington, D.C. Of course, this is a very exclusive creditor committee because we fall outside the common framework of the IMF. So this was established, and we are extremely thankful to all our creditors for the support they are extending to the government of Sri Lanka for us to recover and go in for a sustainable growth. Whilst China is a major creditor, it remains outside the official committee, but continuously engages with Sri Lanka on discussions regarding debt restructuring and has committed to cooperate with Sri Lanka in seeking a speedy debt resolution. Basically, we are lucky our creditor platform is being coordinated by the Paris Club Secretariat. So we are fortunate in that. But of course, China, as I said, sits outside this creditor committee. But they come as an observer, not that they don't participate. The Chinese authorities participate as an observer, but we are having bilateral engagements with all the Chinese authorities who have supported us in financing. The government has also made progress in discussions with private bondholders on potential debt treatments. In addition to efforts to restructure foreign debt, the government intended a domestic debt optimization program with a view to share burden of debt reduction. The implemented DDO, which was passed in Parliament, is been well accepted in the domestic capital market and has been one of the key drivers of the sharp reduction in interest rates experienced during the last month. But however, we are yet to finalize the domestic debt optimization program. There were key, basically about 3 steps in that. Initially, the Sri Lanka development bonds, which we have finalized already. Then you saw the news on the superannuation funds, where we have already reissued the bonds. And then there were a couple of legal requirements which the government had to comply and the central bank had to comply. So we are in the process of complying, and within the next couple of weeks, we are in a position to finalize our domestic debt optimization program fully. Sri Lanka intends to conclude its debt restructuring process during the final quarter of 2023, in line with the IMF's first review, which just commenced yesterday. It's going to be a long review of almost close to 2 weeks, and the President, His Excellency, the President will have the final meeting on the 26th with the fund mission. A successful first review would place Sri Lanka in a prime position to shift from stabilization to growth from 2024 onwards. With stabilization being established, the economy is poised for recovery and for growth from there onwards. It is crucial that this growth is led by exports of goods and services, tourism, FDIs, and other non-debt creating inflows. This would provide Sri Lanka with the forex resources to service debt obligations on a sustainable basis. The tea sector is an important export crop of the country. Measures to improve productivity, quality, and value addition must be at the forefront of efforts in order to enhance Sri Lanka's position in the global tea market and enhance export proceedings. Members of this association have a crucial role to play towards this objective. The government will take every measure possible to improve productivity and supply capacity of the economy. Measures are being taken to free up state-owned land for productive economic activities. This is something which the government is very serious on. The draft amendments to the employment law will identify means to improve labor productivity across the economy. The government is also taking measures to digitize public services and the economy as a whole, which will further enhance productivity and competitiveness of the economy. Enhanced renewable energy generation and CEB restructuring are expected to bring down electricity costs, which will also support competitiveness of industries, including the tea manufacturing. The government is engaging in new trade agreements to improve markets for exports. Negotiations for FTAs are going on with Thailand and are expected to resume with India and China shortly. In the medium term, the government intends to join the Regional Comprehensive Partnership, the RCEP, which will create a large effective market for all exports. These measures for economic stabilization and growth are part of a broader economic reform program being implemented by the government with the intention of removing economic vulnerabilities that have undermined the economy for many decades, while setting up the country for a more robust, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth going forward. Sectors such as tea exports and drivers of this sector, such as your esteemed association, are at the forefront of this effort in expanding exports and supporting Sri Lanka's return to macroeconomic sustainability. Once again, I don't want to talk about tea, but of course, you may not know, I started my career in the private sector. I have maybe few of you know, just after graduation. So I was in the tourism sector for almost a decade or so. Myself and the Honorable Minister, we were elected to Parliament together in 2010. So it's about 13 years back. So tourism would always be one of the key drivers at a time like this. It's a low-hanging fruit. We can see the tourism is improving, but there is potential. We may not touch the best year of 2018, but I think we will make it somewhere there. So the tea culture also becomes important. When we were in the industry, tea was one of the prime products of Sri Lanka to showcase Sri Lanka. So I'm sure you will use all your expertise to diverse the tea production, to be competitive, and to be part of the tourism sector. I would say a very important part of the tourism sector, because it has a culture, and there is a segment that would like to experience different tea varieties and to experience witness manufacturing tea. Finally, I want to tell one thing, and I want to reiterate the fact I think I told briefly this before. We have built on lessons learned from the crisis. We have to admit the fact there were mistakes taking place in the past by different governments. So we have learned from the crisis, and the crisis was too costly for citizens of Sri Lanka. So we have learned lessons from the crisis to develop the foundations of a stable and prosperous Sri Lanka. So from the government's point, we can ensure that the economy will stabilize greatly by the end of the year, as I said earlier. We will go in for a growth in 2024. All decisions what we take for the next 48 months will be based on the framework we have agreed upon with the IMF. Actually, it is not the IMF which we have agreed upon. The recovery process or the reform agenda was designed by us. We were supported by different stakeholders. That was the multilateral agencies. We were supported very much by the development partners. We were supported by our friendly nations. So the IMF per se cannot take a call. They have to consult the stakeholders like all of us do in the industry or the government. So we have a framework. We will ensure that we work within this framework. We cannot deviate from the framework. If we deviate, we once again will have to revert back to what we experienced in 2022. So the government is very much determined to ensure a sustainable economy. So we will not deviate, but we are open for engagements. We are open for discussions. Your concerns can be brought to us. We will see how best we can answer your concerns. But from the government's point, we will work within this framework which we have agreed upon and ensure that we all enjoy a strong and a healthy economy. So I don't want to take much of your time. You will have to excuse me also because I have a very personal engagement to attend. I could not say no to my friend Honorable Ramesh Patirana. That's the reason why I attended. So please excuse me. I have to be at the function by 8 o'clock, which is a very personal family function. I don't generally take off for family activities also because we don't have time to spare. But if I don't go for this function, I may not be able to go home also. So I wish you all the best. Please have trust on the government. We will ensure that Sri Lanka walks in to a greater future and can ensure all decisions taken by the government will establish the fact that we will never ever return to a crisis what we experienced in 2022. In the shorter run, the reform agenda brought in pain. We do understand. But definitely, we are showing positive signs of recovery. And the budget will also concentrate more on the SME sector. His Excellency the President, Ranil Wickremesinghe, is very much concerned how we could support the SME sector, because that's the backbone of the economy. So that also will be looked at. And I'm sure with this budget being presented for the following year, we will be in a better position to position our economy. Thank you very much and all the very best to you.